Alright guys, confession time. I kind of love trash TV. Like a lot. It's a real guilty pleasure of mine. We're talking like Jeremy Kyle before it got cancelled, Judge Rinder. Oh my god, he's amazing. And all those kind of like weird UK documentary style programs like Can't Pay, Will Take It Away, that follows around like High Court bailiffs. There's like UK Border Force, which records UK border enforcement agents at like airports and ports around the country. And oh my god, even the older ones like Wife Swap and Super Nanny and How Clean Is Your House. I am addicted to them. I love that kind of like trashy... I don't want to say watching people suffer, but like, you know that kind of trashy TV that I mean, right? I'm addicted to that stuff. Me and Dan literally used to sit and watch that stuff for hours on a lazy weekend, and it was so much fun. And I'm constantly on the lookout for like new stuff that I've not seen yet. And yeah, I found one of those today in the form of Underage and Pregnant. I think what I watched was quite an old episode. I'm not sure how old, I'm not sure when it's from, but it was new to me. It focuses on the lives of pregnant teenagers in the UK, usually from low-income backgrounds, because they're the most likely to get pregnant underage. I stumbled across this one episode today that kind of shocked me and disgusted me a little bit, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Because I'm a terrible, terrible, terrible person, I have to admit that I think half the appeal of programs like this, for me, is that these are the kinds of people that I grew up around. A lot of these kids are from low-income backgrounds like me, and they went to crappy schools like me, and this is the kind of life that I could very easily have had. So watching these kinds of programs, the only real difference I see between them and me is that I had the motivation to work hard in school and try and get myself out of that small-town, low-income life. And yeah, that's the only difference, really. It could very easily have been me. I know a lot of people don't really believe that because they hear this like weird accent I've got now and think I sound a bit posh, but not at all. not even a little bit. So watching these kinds of shows really makes me appreciate the life that I do have now. And as horrible as it is to say, I'm very glad I didn't end up with the kind of life that a lot of the girls I went to school with did. It's just not for me. And so like I say, these kinds of programs really make me appreciate what I have and what I've worked for. So anyway, I'm watching this one episode this morning, and it kind of hit me hard because one, like I say, it's disgusting, and no one involved seems to realise how disgusting and wrong it is, which is annoying. And the second part is, it reminded me of some questions that I got asked in a live stream a couple of months ago by a young woman. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but that's why I kind of felt it was relevant to make a video on it and talk about it. So let's jump into what this episode's about.
16-year-old Kelly met boyfriend Dan 2 years ago when she was still living with her mum and in year 10 at school. Now they're parents to 1-year-old Natasha.
So for context, I know I have a lot of American viewers and a lot of people all around the world watching me. So in year 10, you are between 14 and 15 years old. Kelly, the girl in this episode that it's focused on, she was 14 when she met this guy. That is still a child, if you ask me. You can't leave school in the UK until after year 11, which is age 16, and the age of consent in the UK is 16. So at 14, legally, she should not be having sex with anyone, let alone this guy.
Like, I was 14 when we met.
Were you?
It was just before my birthday. So I was practically 15.
Yeah.
He was 21 when I met him, which I didn't think was too bad. Like 21, that's like the highest I'd like ever go.
Like that's not okay. That's not even a little bit okay. I don't get how her parents are so kind of chilled out about this. And is anyone else kind of creeped out by the fact that he might be, I think, 23 in this clip, but he doesn't look 23. He looks considerably older. And she is supposed to be 16 here, and I kind of think she looks younger. That honestly kind of weirds me out a little bit. It makes me wonder what kind of person or age he's actually attracted to, and it makes me feel very uncomfortable.
She was mad when I first found out. She was barely 15, and 15-year-olds should be like, I don't know,
Running around the streets, getting drunk, causing trouble.
not looking after little kids.
Yeah, or, you know, at 15 you could be getting an education and planning for your future, but whatever.
I'd only had like 4 or 5, maybe 6, like short-term relationships, and then I met Dan.
Okay, not to be judgmental, but am I the only one who thinks this is kind of like a lot for a 14-year-old? Or maybe that's just because I like had no friends at that age. So whatever. I don't know. It was, I guess, pretty normal at my school for like other girls to, I guess, have that many relationships and date that much. So I don't know. I don't want to get too judgmental there. That's not the point. But at 14, you are still figuring out so much about who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what kind of people you want to be around, what you want to do with your life, all that kind of stuff. So I guess casual dating and dating a number of people is fine, but to be 14 and you honestly, you don't know what you want to do with your life. You don't even have that many options at that point. You're still figuring things out. So to be in a serious relationship and have a baby with someone just 3 months into that first serious relationship, I don't think that's the healthiest thing for anyone. And yeah, I mean, at this point, we should kind of be asking, like, a 14-year-old and a 21-year-old, like, how did they even meet? What do they even have in common? But sadly, like, in these kinds of places and with these kinds of people, that is a lot more common than you'd think. Where I grew up, it was completely normal to go to bars and clubs at, like, 15 and drink alongside adults. And I did, despite, as young as I look. They didn't ID me, they just let me in because you're a girl and they want girls in the clubs. That's it. So yeah, chances are that kind of thing is where these guys met. And as for what they have in common, well, I guess at 14, she should have been focusing on her education, on school, on figuring out what she wants to do with her life and her career and all that kind of stuff. And at 21, he should, by rights, be a fully independent adult who is in further education or who's working. He should be independent and able to look after himself. But neither of them were doing this. They should have been at completely different stages of their lives, but because of the circumstances they're in, they weren't. And sadly, this is the case often in a lot of small towns where, I guess there isn't much difference between like a teenager and a young adult. She was probably bored by school, and she probably didn't really have many ambitions other than, get a boyfriend and be a mum at some point. Because they were the kind of things that were hammered into me around that age. The whole idea of like a career was sort of foreign to me. I thought I'd end up in some dead-end job that I hated, probably shop work or something like that. I thought actual careers and real jobs and doing stuff you enjoyed, I thought that was for kids from richer backgrounds and good families and good schools, and I thought I wasn't a part of that. So I can understand why she wouldn't think that either, because I didn't for a long time. And as for this guy,
when Dan and Kelly met, Dan was 21, living with his parents, and had started work full-time as an electrician.
Yeah, so he's only just started working. Still living with his mum. Honestly, that's where I was at 14, living with my parents, just started my first job. So, yeah, I guess there's that. But regardless of this fact, regardless of whether he is an immature man-child or not, the fact still remains that he is a legal adult, and he has no business going anywhere near a 14-year-old child. A child of 14 is unable to consent. Legally, physically, emotionally, they cannot consent. Her brain and body are still both developing at that point. She hasn't finished going through puberty. There is a considerable imbalance of power in that relationship, and that's not okay. Not only is he physically bigger than her, but he's in a different place emotionally. He's got more money than her. He technically has more independence than her. He has more rights as an adult than her. There's a huge imbalance going in there, and it's not fair to her at all. There's also practical issues when you have an age gap like this in your relationship, which they touch on later in the program. For example, when they argue about how he's going to go out for his birthday and she can't go because the bowling alley that he's going to doesn't allow under 18s after a certain time, so she can't go with him.
You're going bowling?
Next week, Dan is planning a rare night. He's celebrating his 24th birthday.
But instead of going to a bowling centre that doesn't have an age limit after a certain time, you go to the one that does. You could easily have changed your plans and made them so that I could come too, but you won't.
I never think, do I? I never listen, I never think.
It's a small example, but it's just another example of how different their lives are. and how they're in completely different places. And, you know, he wouldn't have this problem if he wasn't dating a literal child.
Both their parents had expressed their worries about the age gap.
I thought he was a really nice guy when I met him. I was very concerned about the age. But you look at some of the lads that are out there Kelly's age and what they do and what they get up to. He's actually a very nice guy and he's very level-headed.
I honestly don't know why her mother didn't immediately step in and try and stop this. I've got a niece myself and she's only 6 months old, but I can tell you for a fact, when she's older, when she's a teenager, if a grown man tries to date her when she's 14, I wouldn't stand for that. Never mind her mum. Like, it's not appropriate. And I'm sorry, but, like, to call him a nice guy and whatever, yeah, maybe he seems nice, but nice guys don't put their penis in children. Nice guys don't take advantage of underage girls.
When Daniel said he was seeing this girl called Kelly, we thought very nice, and he brought her over to us. And then my daughter told me that she was 14, and I went absolutely ballistic.
But boys being boys, I didn't listen to my parents.
Except it's not just boys being boys, is it? Because you're not a boy. You're a man. You're an adult man. Act your age. The law doesn't care about boys being boys. The law doesn't make exceptions for boys being boys. Not when you're a grown adult. This is like a genuinely serious thing, and he's just making light of it with like, oh, you know, boys being boys. Didn't listen to my parents. It's like, you're literally breaking the law and potentially emotionally damaging a child.
The girls I've been out with are around my age, a year or two younger. But Kelly's definitely the youngest.
Seriously, with this clip, I hope she is, because if he has touched anyone under the age of 14, that's a whole new level of creepy.
3 months into their relationship, the couple suspected Kelly might be pregnant.
We knew something wasn't right because she was putting on weight, so we thought we'd do a test anyway.
And okay, this is what really makes me mad now, because not only is he taking advantage of a 14-year-old child, but he wasn't protecting her in any way or thinking about her future at all. He says he cares about her, but if he did, he wouldn't be risking her throwing her life away to have a child. Why weren't either of them mature enough or wise enough or even just, I don't know, considerate enough to bother using contraception? If you're not mature enough to understand that you need to use contraception because you're not ready to have a child, then I don't think you're actually ready to have sex at all. He was the literal adult here and he needed to take responsibility. And if he really did care about her at all, then I don't understand why he'd just be okay with letting her risk her education and her future just so he could put his penis in her.
I felt ready. Wasn't sure if she felt ready, but she soon convinced me she was.
This is actually a really telling statement because, maybe he was ready to have a child, but that's because he was literally an adult and he was able to financially support a kid. She is still a child herself. Of course you didn't think she was ready because she probably wasn't ready because she's still in school. How did he not think about this before, like I say, sticking his penis in a literal child? Why did he not think about this when, choosing to take the risk of not using contraception? And I think the worst part about all this is that there was no punishment for him at all. A grown adult took advantage of a 14-year-old child and there were no consequences. It's bizarre to me.
But because Kelly was under 16 at the time, the current law stated that Dan could face up to 2 years in jail.
Someone reported Dan to some kind of agency or something.
And had social services and the police come to my door. So I just fell apart, really.
Would I have a criminal record? Am I going to lose my job? So I was quite worried.
And once I'd explained everything and they'd talked to Kelly, I had to sign a document to say that I'd give Kelly permission. And then social services wrote to me and said there would be no more action.
And then the programme goes on and talks about how when he didn't learn his lesson the first time, he managed to get her pregnant again at 16.
Everything seemed to be calming down. We got our own place. We got all the stuff. We're taking day by day, and then we find out she's pregnant again.
And we were chatting about having kids at a later stage. Dan was saying that he's not ready to have another kid. And then the day after I'm pregnant, it's like, whoa.
I'll keep saying it. If you're not ready to have a kid, use contraception. Obviously, mistakes happen. Contraception doesn't always work. Condoms fail. You miss a pill, things like that. But it really sounds like, from watching this whole episode, that wasn't the case. They just weren't being responsible enough. And it's bizarre to me. Then there are clips of her talking about how she loves being a housewife and a stay-at-home mum. And she got some GCSEs at school, which is great, fantastic. Genuinely, I'm impressed by that. Good for her. But then she goes on to talk about how she doesn't really know what she's doing. She keeps forgetting to buy household things that she needs. She burns a chicken and nearly sets the oven on fire.
Although Kelly left school with 11 GCSEs just after Natasha was born, she is now a stay-at-home mum.
I suppose I am being a housewife, and I do enjoy it because I don't work for money. Dan works and he pays for everything. That's my way of repaying him, keeping the house tidy, looking after Natasha, cooking his dinner, even running a bath for Dan. For when he gets in from work, I'll run him a bath, put beer on the side of the bath. He'll come in and be like, oh, thanks, babe, and then I'll cook his dinner. I'm cooking a roast dinner tonight. I kind of know what I'm doing. I've done it a couple of times. I don't cover it either. Just because I keep forgetting to go and buy some foil. Sit there for mummy. Oh my god. I just set the cooker on fire like the chicken.
And, all of this is understandable because she's only 16. She's probably not quite ready to take on that full responsibility of running an entire household by herself and looking after a baby. It's a hell of a lot of responsibility. She's still learning and growing up herself. It's a lot to ask of a child. So for an adult to come along and literally throw her headfirst into this and then give her 2 children to look after at the same time is... I don't know how he can be okay with himself and not feel bad about it or guilty about it. They both just throughout this whole program seem so miserable and unhappy. Genuinely really sad and difficult to watch. This wasn't just a program that made me kind of angry, but it made me really sad as well.
A lot of my friends are more Dan's age, just because I have friends with children now. I'd much prefer to socialise for Natasha rather than myself.
Yeah.
I'd rather go and see her group of mates than see mine. Speaking to people my own age, oh, what are you doing the weekend? Oh, I'm going out and getting drunk. It's oh, have fun. Good luck. I won't miss the hangover.
When she turns 18, the freedom she's lost being a teenager, I think she's going to go out, think, actually, I enjoy this, and go out every weekend. Because that's what I was like. My social life at the moment is very minimal. All my time's with Natasha now.
I think over time, if I was to be off work permanently, we'd end up killing each other. The days go longer. We seem to annoy each other more.
Sometimes we do shout at each other, don't we? Oh, just shut up, leave me alone.
You shout at me.
Yeah, but I'm pregnant, I'm allowed to.
That's not an excuse.
So you just think I'm a bitch then?
I never said that.
You just blatantly did, just in your own words?
No. I said it's got nothing to do with the hormones.
Just wants this, wants that, do this, do that.
Are you happy, Dan?
Yes, in a way. No, in others. I don't know, I just feel trapped sometimes. I sound depressed, don't I? No, I'm fine.
So what can we learn from this whole story? What can we take away from a program like this? What can we learn about relationships and age gaps and consent? So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, a couple of months back now, I was doing a live stream, and in the live chat, there was a young girl asking about kind of like what kind of age gap was too big in a relationship. And I think she was a teenager, and she was either thinking about dating someone older or something like that. And a lot of us tried to give her advice and stuff. And that's why I want to talk about this, because I think it's relevant to a lot of you guys who watch my videos. Honestly, I would say when it comes to relationships, it's less about what your ages are and if there's an age gap, and more about where you as individuals are in your life at the time when you're considering a relationship. That said, I think the biggest and most important thing to mention is that while an age gap relationship can work, please don't ever, under any circumstances, have sex with a child. And I can't believe I even need to say this. I don't care how mature you think that person is. If you know they're a child, don't go near them. Don't even think about it. Don't even consider it a little bit. If they're under the legal age of consent, don't touch them. Simple as that. How am I having to say this in a video? Seriously. And if you are underage and someone older is pursuing you either in a emotional or physical relationship in some way, really think hard about what's happening, what's going on, and what kind of position you're putting yourself in. I know it can be very flattering to have an older person like you, but you really have to think a lot about what their motives are, especially if they know how young they are and they know they're breaking the law. Think about why exactly are they interested in someone so young? Why aren't they dating someone their own age or older? What are the legal consequences going to be for this other person if they do break the law and have a physical relationship with you? Is it really going to work out long term? Do either of you actually have anything in common? Are they going to be taking advantage of you? Where are you both in your lives right now? And is there any imbalance of power there? For example, are they physically bigger than you? Do they have more money than you? Do they have more freedom than you? Are they in an actual position of power over you? Do they have more influence than you in some way? These are all things you have to think about, and I strongly recommend you don't pursue a relationship with someone older than you if you are under the age of consent. In the example in this TV show, the age gap is 7 years, and I think in the grand scheme of things, that isn't much at all. Like 7 years is not really a long time. However, when one of those people is a literal child, it is a huge, huge difference. So 7 years between a 28-year-old and a 35-year-old is nothing, because you're probably both at very similar stages in your life. You're probably both like financially independent, maybe living by yourself. You probably both have jobs and careers. You're earning your own money. Maybe you're both starting to think about family. In that case, 7 years isn't really a long time at all. And yeah, in that case, an age gap doesn't really matter, I don't think. But again, it's more down to the individuals than anything else. There's no hard and fast rules here, other than, don't put your penis in someone unable to consent. That is a hard and fast rule. And yeah, even bigger age gaps than like 7 years can work. For example, like a 25-year-old and a 40-year-old can work. Because again, maybe they're in similar positions in their lives, similar situations, maybe they have similar goals that they're working towards. That's absolutely fine, that can work out. But again, if you're older or younger, maybe that 15-year age gap means a lot more. For example, I think none of us would be okay with a 25-year-old and a 10-year-old, because that is sick. But you also have to think about it the other way as well. So for example, a 45-year-old and a 60-year-old might not work out, because the 45-year-old is still very career focused, maybe like focusing on family and raising kids, whereas a 60-year-old might be starting to consider retirement and so on. So again, different stages of life. It's not necessarily to do with the gap in your ages, but more about just who you both are as individuals and where you are in your lives. And it's not just big age gaps that can be a problem as well. Small age gaps can as well. So, for example, a 30-year-old and a 33-year-old, that's nothing. That's probably never going to be a problem for anyone. However, a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, same age gap, could be a huge problem, because the 19-year-old has probably just started uni and the 22-year-old has probably just started their graduate job. So big difference in where they currently are in their lives and what their goals are and what they're working towards and what their priorities are. So again, it's not so much what the age gap is, but where you are in your lives. So yeah, there's a hell of a lot more to consider than just looking at numbers. I think the example in this TV show does highlight a few problems very well. For example, since they're at different stages of their lives, they don't necessarily have the same kind of goals as each other. Kelly was studying for her GCSEs while Dan was trying to find a job. It can be difficult to relate to each other when you have such different goals and priorities in life, and that can cause a lot of problems in a relationship. There's also the fact that she was completely reliant on him to earn money because she was literally too young to get a job. I mean, maybe she could get a part-time job, but not a full-time one. And then when she was old enough to get a job, she was pregnant and she couldn't work when she was pregnant. So she was constantly reliant on him for money. And again, that imbalance in power can cause a lot of tensions and a lot of problems. The age difference and her being so young meant, like we mentioned earlier, she wasn't able to do a lot of the same things that he could do. So she couldn't go out to the pub with him and his friends. She couldn't go out to his birthday party at a bowling alley because she was too young. Not being able to socialize together is going to cause a huge strain on any relationship. And you can't necessarily expect the older person to constantly do what the younger person wants, because that's not really fair. Why should one person miss out on certain life experiences because of their partner? Partners should kind of build each other up and I guess make each other better and make life experiences better. I don't think one should ever be necessarily holding the other back. And then, of course, there are legal considerations. She was under the age of consent, and I do think he should have faced some kind of legal consequences for his actions, because he knew how young she was. Like, this wasn't like a case of her lying about her age. No, he knew she was 14. And he still went ahead with it, and that's not okay. Anyway, I'm going to hand this over to you guys at this point. What do you think about the example in the TV programme? What do you think about age gaps in relationships in general? What do you think about this particular situation of a 21-year-old getting a 14-year-old pregnant? Do you think he should have faced more consequences? How do you think the parents should have reacted and responded to this? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching today. Hopefully it wasn't too ranty or too dark, or I don't know. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys again soon. Huge thank you to everyone supporting me on Patreon this month, with a special thank you going to Data Jack, Trae Sprowles, Gambit and his chauffeur, Liv's Pantyhose Addiction, Mark Dauner, Christian Berg, Nathalie Romer, Simon Lundh, Jadeon Sheppard, Robert Korte, Peter Kyrouac, Sir Michael Moore, Christina the Atheist, Sage Villarreal and Loren Hart. You guys and everyone supporting me on Patreon are absolutely amazing, and I couldn't do this without you, so thank you so much. And remember, if you are supporting me on Patreon, you can get exclusive access to my Discord server where you can come join in the conversation. So hopefully I'll see you guys over there. And thank you all so much.